Welcome back, Wolfpack Verlis here, and this is how to use Rotom Heat, or the Toaster Oven Rotom. Oh, it even has little oven mitts, that's neat. So let's go and look at Rotom's stats. In this form, Rotom is going to be a very tanky Pokemon. Once again, we see 107 on the defense, 107 on the special defense, still a nice amount of special attack with 105, and then 50 for the hit points, 86 on the speed, and 65 on the attack. So the 50 hit points, not insane, but if we just max out our hit points and we go into the 107s with the defenses, it's still going to be a very tanky Pokemon. If you have gone up against a Rotom, you know how frustrating any Rotom form can be as long as you're hitting it with neutral hits or even with resisted hits. It feels like this Pokemon refuses to take damage. Even when you hit it super effective sometimes, it can be a 2-hit KO. Also, 86 speed means you're going to outspeed some other tanky Pokemon. Now, since Rotom is a fire type in this Heat form, it is going to be better against some steel type Pokemon, which are generally slower, and that does give you a huge edge. Also, 105 special attack, just a solid hit even without much investment. Look at its typing, it's an electric fire typing, which is pretty interesting because you do lose out to Rotom Wash, but you also have the second best typing, I would say, for the Rotom forms. Only two weaknesses, water and rock. So as long as you play around those, you're pretty good, and a ton of resistances. If you're going to be using it for resistances, it can be a better Rotom form for just direct switches. Flying, bug, steel, fire, grass, electric, ice, and fairy. Oh my goodness, that's almost too much resistances. And like I said before, we're that fire typing, so we do get really good coverage with the electric typing. Alright, now before we hop into Pokemon Showdown, I do want to show the electric fire coverage that Rotom gets, that you don't have too many not very effective moves, and you have a lot of super effective moves, so it is good coverage overall. And one thing I didn't mention with Mow Rotom is the electric grass typing. It's probably the worst offensive typing for Rotom's forms, but at the same time with the fire and the grass typings, we have a move that's going to lower our special attack. So we need to make sure that fire or grass type attack counts, but at the same time we're going to get more out of that fire type in more situations. So that's just something to consider. A lot of these not very effectives are going to come from like ground type and dragon type Pokemon since they do resist you or just have an immunity with the electric. But overall, this does have a lot of really good synergy with the typing. Looking at Rotom's moves, the first set I was thinking is just your generic Rotom set where you max invest into special defense. So you go Calm Nature with a hit point and special defense investment, and then you just put the last 4 points into defense. What you do after that is go for the Will-O-Wisp. Now the problem here is that you are throwing out a lot of fire, so if they do have a physical fire type attacking Pokemon, you might be in a bit of trouble because you can't Will-O-Wisp it for the burn, and you aren't going to have really too much against it. But what this Rotom wants to do is it wants to set up the Will-O-Wisp, it wants to use Pain Split, it wants to get a monstrous hit with Overheat, and then it wants to Volt Switch out. So Rotom Heat is going to want to run Volt Switch more than any other Rotom next to Motom because they do Overheat, they do Leaf Storm, and they want to get all that damage across, but then they have to switch out because then they don't have too much damage, but it's better than just directly switching out as long as you get that Volt Switch in there. So you can capitalize that in some kind of way. After that, you have Pain Split for heal, Will-O-Wisp just kind of status around your opponent, and that is your damage right there. Now you might see Rotom Heat run Foul Play. Foul Play is also going to be a very strong option because it uses your target's attack to calculate damage, which means after you use Overheat, Foul Play doesn't matter, so you can still use it for pretty decent amounts of damage, and you can also run Thunder Wave. So with Thunder Wave Pain Split, you lead with Thunder Wave, then you have that extra turn to heal up before your opponent attacks you, which means you Thunder Wave into the Overheat, you Pain Split into the Foul Play, then you still have like a lot of health, you're getting a lot of damage on your opponent really quick, then the next Pokemon that comes in, you do the same thing. Thunder Wave, Pain Split, except maybe more foul plays that time since you won't have too much damage from the Overheat, but still a little bit of nice chip damage, and then you just kind of go for the statuses, get some health back, then switch out. With leftovers, you're going to be getting a lot of health, and one other EV spread option you can do is run it Modest. Modest with max hit point, max special attack investment means your Overheat is going to sting. Get as much damage as possible. Like you Thunder Wave into an Overheat, and you might find some neutral one-hit KOs in that situation, or you just go for like Pain Split into Overheat, that's extra damage, that's more chance of just KOing, and that's kind of what you're looking for, or you just run it like a tank. Since we don't have the Will-O-Wisp, we might have to break it up a bit more. We can run a Bold Nature, put about 100 EVs into Bold, then go for the rest into Special Defense, kind of make it even, a little more defensive, and then you're good to go. So you just set up the Thunder Wave and go for the crazy damage. Also, it does make sense to be a bit more defensive with the Foul Play, since that means we are looking to go up against physical attackers and use their damage against them. Now, another main way of running Rotom Heat is kind of like Mow Rotom, is that you want to have Trick, Overheat, Volt Switch, and then some kind of other move here. It can be offensive if you want it to be that way. Can be a Thunderbolt, that way you have more damage just directly, or you can even put Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, some kind of status, because in an ideal scenario, you trick your Choice Scarf onto an opponent's Pokemon that doesn't want to have a Choice Scarf. that if they're playing setup, they're playing status or something, well, that's going to shut them down, and then you just go into an overheat. You can go for more status. So you trick a Pokemon, you paralyze it, and then you go for the overheat for ridiculous amounts of damage. And with this, you are going to be a bit more of a frail Rotom. Max investing into speed with the Choice Scarf means you're going to outspeed a ton of Pokemon, and then with the Modest Nature, you're going to have a ridiculous amount of damage with that overheat, and that's what you're looking for. Now, some people, they'll see a Rotom and they'll think, alright, this is going to be some kind of tanky Pokemon, so they might not just expect the outright overheat. They might try to attack you directly, they might try to get a little bit of status onto you, and then they get blown up and punished really hard by it. So you are just going to play Rotom as a somewhat bulky sweeper, that it's not going to die immediately to any hit, and it still finds a lot of outspeeds. But the problem is, you just have to bring it in, overheat if it's favorable, volt switch if it isn't, trick if possible, and then the status if you've already tricked. If not, it's pretty much overheat, switch, be a Choice Scarf, brutal overheat Pokemon, and Rotom can succeed pretty well. That, between your switches, you can switch in Rotom, because remember, it does have a lot of resistances and natural bulk. So you switch it in for the overheat, switch it out, switch it in for the overheat, and you can still find a lot of really silly things to do with this Rotom. I will say it is a very powerful Pokemon because it's a very tricky Pokemon. You don't know if it's going to be the trick set, you don't know if it's going to be someone that just likes Rotom Heat more, so they're running a Rotom Wash tanky set, but they're still bringing the Rotom Heat power. It's a really interesting thing to see, but it's also very powerful. You'll see it from time to time as well, depending on the metagame. Rotom Heat had a very good run in VGC because of all of the Mega Mawwiles. So Mega Mawwile doesn't want to eat an overheat like that, so you're forcing switches, you can trick onto other Pokemon, and you just have a lot of really good options with Rotom Heat. So if you guys enjoyed this video, that's how you use Rotom Heat, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.